Welcome back to Let's Code. I'm Chris Biscardi, and today we are going to upgrade this block breaker game first from Heron to Bevy Rapier so that we can go from Bevy 0.7 to Bevy 0.8. Now the game has a couple of different things that we're going to have to take care of. The first, of course, is the Heron to Bevy Rapier transition. Heron hasn't been updated for Bevy 0.8, so we do have to move to Bevy Rapier, which I was going to do anyway, so not a huge deal. And then the UI is built with Kayak UI, which I think has a Bevy 0.8 branch already. So Bevy Rapier and Kayak UI are the big dependencies here. Both of them have been updated for Bevy 0.8, and we should be fine. So number one, we should take a look at where we have collision detection in the first place. We have a couple of custom commands here: spawn ball, spawn power up, and spawn level. I don't think spawn level uses the rigid body static, so they all use some features from Heron, and we'll have to convert them. So this is a sensor, and then the ball itself is a sphere, which I'm hoping to upgrade from the geometry package that we're using for this to Bevy 0.8, which I believe has circles now. And you can see that we have a dynamic rigid body, a static rigid body for the level, and then a sensor for the sort of like area below the paddle where the ball can't go. So it's worth checking. It's worth checking out the other dependencies that we have. So there's IES loopless, Bevy prototype Leon, and then Bevy asset loader. I believe Bevy asset loader has a 0.8 branch, so I think that should be just fine. So there's a release 16 hours ago. It says please the linter, but I believe that this will be So the last release for Bevy Asset Loader was 2 months ago. So when we do the 0.8 upgrade, we might need to depend on the branch, which exists right here. So it's the Bevy main branch. It was updated 16 hours ago, so it shouldn't be a big deal. But maybe we'll only do the switch to Bevy Rapier today because of that. And then we'll wait for Bevy Asset Loader. It looks like Bevy prototype Leon was released about 7 hours ago, which means that it probably supports, so 0.6 supports Bevy 0.8, so that's good. And then IES loopless is our last dependency check, and it looks like they have a Bevy main branch that tracks, but maybe they don't have a release yet. Which, I mean, the Bevy 0.8 release came out on a Saturday morning, so I'm not expecting any of these to actually be updated until at Monday at the earliest. So it looks like today our big transfer is going to be from Heron to Bevy Rapier, and then we're going to wait for a couple of our dependencies to update to the official 0.8 release before we upgrade from Bevy Rapier, I think 15 to 16. So let's start with removing Heron, and then cargo add Bevy Rapier 2D. And I don't think we need any of these extra features that came up. We aren't going to touch anything else yet because we're just going to do... So basically the way we're going to do this is we're going to switch from Heron to Bevy Rapier. And Bevy Rapier is going to be the previous version. So instead of 16, we're going to use 15 so that we get the 0.7 support. And this should build. So if we run it in release mode like we did before, and it looks like we actually got a issue. Well, I say that like I wasn't expecting one. We've removed an entire dependency and we are switching to a different physics library. So a lot of these will be exactly that. And it looks like those are the only issues we have. So we could go through this and change each of these individually. Let's take out the Heron prelude. I don't remember if Bevy Rapier has a prelude. Bevy Rapier does have a prelude, so we're going to bring that in. That'll fix some of our issues. So velocity, for example, this physics material doesn't exist in Bevy Rapier, so we are going to have to change it. So I've updated the physics material to be restitution, friction for the friction, and then there's also density in the physics material in Heron, I believe. So I've added that temporarily here. If we need it, we can use it. It may be worth, because this is the ball, going to check that, but I think I'm gonna leave it commented out for the moment, and then if we need it, we'll add it back in. So instead of sphere, we can do collider ball, both with the radius of 10, and then we get rotation constraints lock, which we also need to update. In this case, that's as simple as saying locked axis rotation locked. So a lot of the APIs from Heron, you can see, are kind of just renames of other things or recombinations of other things. And now we need to do the same for the other two spawns. So here where we have rigid body sensor, I'm going to change that to just sensor. Where we have the physics material, I'm going to change that to the restitution and the friction. And then for the collision shape capsule, we're going to do collider capsule. And this is where it gets a little bit interesting, because these two numbers are vec2s. So they're vectors, which I believe are the width and the height of the capsule. So I'm going to take our half segment here, so 20, and just put that in both places. I think this will get us a box. So our capsules will be significantly fatter, or like more square specifically. So our capsules will be significantly more square than they were before, but we can change that later when we actually have this running, and we can check the size of our capsules and where they're positioned. And then we can change this velocity from linear to velocity linear. We can kill the third or the Z index and use a vec2 here. Remember that Heron treats everything as a vec3, even if you're in 2D, but Bevy Rapier 2D specializes, so it uses vec2s for 2D and vec3s for 3D. We have a 2D game, so that is what we're doing. And then we have the rotation constraints, which are locked axes, rotation locked, because we don't want the capsules, which are the power-ups, to be flipping around in the air. And then we start talking about the board, so like the level itself. And what we're building up here inside of this level when we spawn a new level is all of the cuboids, all of the rectangles. So instead of static, this is going to be fixed. Instead of collision shape, this is going to be lowercase c cuboid. Let's do that on a different level. So insert collider cuboid. And then we'll take the same value we were using before, and we'll paste that here, and we'll paste that here, and we'll get rid of the old one. The old one has a border radius, which we weren't using, and the new one doesn't have a border radius, so that's fine. And then we need to do the same physics material that we did before, and that's just a copy paste of the restitution, the friction, and then the density. So that's all of our custom commands. I believe we have some more to do. So let's try to run the game and see where the next things are to do. And it looks like right now all we have is this ambiguous fill mode. So ambiguous because of multiple glob imports of a name in the same module. Which file is this in? This is in custom commands. So the fill mode here could be one of a few different things. It could be the Bevy prototype Leon, or it could be Bevy Rapier 2D. We're going to use the Bevy prototype Leon. So we are going to just fully qualify this and make sure that it is using exactly the fill mode that we want it to use, even though we're importing all of the prelude for both of these. And this is one of the downsides of using preludes. If you have too many preludes and pulled in, you can end up with collisions between them, especially if they're, in the same category, which they often are. In this case, we have a geometry builder, a geometry-based 2D physics library, and then also Bevy has its own geometry stuff. So we were bound to run into something. In this case, it was only the fill mode. So back in main, we do need to remove the Heron import, and we'll pull in Bevy prelude, or not Bevy prelude, Bevy Rapier 2D prelude star. And instead of physics plugin here, we're going to add the Rapier physics plugin with no user data with 100 pixels per meter. And then we're also going to leave the debug plugin just kind of sitting there for a second. We don't need to insert gravity here. Although now that I think about it, we do have zero gravity. The default in Rapier is not zero gravity. So we will have to figure out how to fix that. So in our case, all I'm going to do is comment this out. We will have some gravity impacting our ball at that point. But I believe that the only component that we don't want gravity to affect in the end is actually the ball itself. So maybe we'll be able to use gravity for, say, the pills coming down, which would be really nice. Our movement system is broken. The fill mode, again, is going to come from Bevy prototype Leon, and then prelude fill mode. We've got this physics material again with the same values. So I'm just going to say restitution with a coefficient of 1, friction with 0. And then we've got a ball here with a radius of 10. Our velocity is going to come from linear. It's going to be a vec2. We're going to get rid of the z value. Our rotation constraints are going to change to be locked axes. And then we do it again. In this case, we're going to have a insert collider cuboid. The half extents is 11010 as a vec3. So what is that? X and then Y. And then we get rid of this cuboid. And then this is going to be linear again. And this is going to be a vec2 instead of a vec3. And it's still going to be 0. Collisions is something we're using for the paddle collisions. So I think I'm just going to comment that out. There's going to be a function here to determine the movement of the paddle. And I think gravity, movement, this collisions right here is what we're going to end up commenting out for now. So this is checking if the paddle is colliding with the wall and changing its behavior based on whether it is colliding with the wall or not. I think that because this system is so simple at the moment, we're going to remove that collisions component, which is special to Heron. I'm just going to copy this, I'm going to comment it out, and then I'm going to rip it apart. So for colliders and collision data, we don't have collisions. So this is gone. If pressed key code A, velocity, whatever, we're just going to let it set the velocity for now. And we'll go back and we will fix the, we're going to fix it being able to get outside of the board in a different way. Maybe using collision events or something like that. So I'll get rid of this wrapping for loop as well, because we don't really need it. These from linears all become linear, all become vec2s, all we can get rid of the z value, which is really nice. The wall collision is something we never use, so we'll get rid of that. And this should let our paddle move without actually doing the wall detection. So that won't be an issue anymore. So let's go back to the top of the file and continue. The fill mode is Bevy prototype Leon again. Rigid body static is rigid body fixed. Physic material is the same thing we've been doing with the restitution and the friction. And then we've got a custom collision shape, which is going to be interesting. So let's try to insert a collider, compound, convex, polygon, cuboid, half space, polyline. I think polyline is what we're looking for. Yeah, so we get polyline here, custom collision shape, polyline. I think these are the vertices and these are the indexes. So let's remove this, copy out these arguments and then paste them in here instead. And then we'll get rid of the custom call here. And it's basically the same thing. I think this polyline needs to be something else though. So we're here on the Bevy Rapier 2D docs page. We do need V15, not 16, because we haven't upgraded yet. We're going to look for polyline, if I can type correctly. We've got geometry polyline right here, and it takes an option of a vec of arrays. So U32, 2. We've got floats here, which is interesting. So the vertices are a vec of vect, whatever vect is. Let's take a look at that. Vect is a vec2, and the indices are the arrays that we have here already. So let's do, if we've replaced 0.2 with vect, that seems to work. So if we run this, we still have issues, which we haven't fixed the rest of the file yet. So that makes sense. In this case, we will put sensor for rigid body, and this cuboid will be a new cuboid. We've got our X and our Y here, and we get rid of the old cuboid, and then that's that. I think that we're going to lose the green color here because I removed the debug, and the debug was the only thing adding the color. So we'll have to add that back. The collision events also change. The structure of them, I believe, changes. So let's run the app and see if we can, maybe we skip that and do that in a second. So each of these has 3 fields to start with, right? So the started and stopped both have 3 fields. We don't do anything with stopped, so it won't matter. We don't need to call rigid body entity because these are the entities when they come in Bevy Rapier. Although I do think we need to get the values of them because I think these are references. And yeah, we can see that right here. Ball, get mute, expected struct entity got a reference to an entity, consider dereferencing. So we're just going to drop in here and do stars, velocity.linear.y. So velocity.linvel is the word. So another naming change from Heron to Rapier. This is going to be from linear. It's going to be a vec2, and we're going to get rid of the z value because we don't use it. And then we have the same thing to do here, exact same thing we just did. We don't use the third. The rigid bodies don't exist, and they have to be the values, not the references. And exact same thing again. We use collision events quite a bit. I don't know that I realized that we were using them that much. And then we get the values instead of the references and more collision events. Of course, it helps to hit the right key when you're programming. get rid of these rigid body entity calls again. We just get the values, and then collision events again. Maybe I should consolidate these collision events somehow. There's quite a lot of them. I haven't like benchmarked this at all. So it's worth noting that doing all of these collision events may be affecting the performance. Velocity.linear is linvel. From linear becomes linear. The the vec3 becomes a vec2, and we get to get rid of the z value. And then that looks like we might be ready. And then new game, and we get, oh, I realize now that we had the debug colors under the bricks. So they look very different. We also don't get our ball spawning. New game. I wonder if it goes away immediately. So let's go for custom commands, spawn ball. I bet you this goes away immediately because there's a gravity on it. So let's do insert. I think it's gravity scale 0. So a little debugging to do, but otherwise, a successful upgrade, I think, or a successful side grade, as it were. Oh, you know what? It might be. This might be in a different spot. Let's check the camera first. What if we do a projection scale of like 5? Is that going to zoom us out? Okay, but I don't see a ball spawning, so it's not just spawning in the wrong spot. We probably want to turn the debug colliders on. So let's turn the Rapier debug plugin renderer on, and we hit new game, and we see the ball. So the issue is that we don't have a sprite on the ball. Not that the ball isn't there. It's really useful to have these debug renderers. So we see all the wireframes. We see the wireframe for the containing board. We see them all for the rectangles themselves. I think our collision detection for the ball on the rectangles is not quite working correctly, or rather the damage isn't working correctly. So we're going to have to debug that. But otherwise, we have mostly converted over. We have a paddle that works. We have a ball that works. We have the collision against the side values that's working. I think that the angle off of the paddle is currently not working. So you can see if I hit it like on the side of the paddle or the far edge of the paddle, it doesn't go zooming off. So a couple things to fix, but overall, a working game again. So I'll go away and fix those, and I will catch you in the next video. Thanks for hanging out.